Welcome to Underdubs, a podcast about 70s progressive rock and more. This podcast is a conversational music variety show with a focus on the classic progressive rock artists of the 1970s and how their music has shaped culture, technology, and the music of today. We'll, of course, cover the classic prog bands like Yes and Genesis, but also other forms like the Canterbury scene, neo-prog, proto-prog, and fusion, and all points in between. Your hosts, Brian Donahue and Pat Strauser, are two of the founding members of the instrumental progressive rock fusion band Volare, based in Athens, Georgia, from the mid-1990s. In today's episode, we talk about the music that we've been listening to lately. We talk about our typical listening habits, where we go to listen to music, and a handful of artist selections like Gentle Giant, Steve Tibbetts, Green Slade, Triumph, and more. We even coin a new music category term. Be sure to check out the links that we provide in the notes for playlists and other content that we discuss here. We hope you enjoy the show. So what's up, man? How's it going?
Hello, Pat. It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
We haven't done an Underdubs call in a long time, and maybe we owe everybody an explanation, but we've just been busy people.
Both have families, right? So lots of things to do all the time.
It's true. Yeah. So, if anybody had a hankering to hear two middle-aged losers talk about the world's most unpopular music, we're back. This is your chance.
That's right. Everyone can breathe a collective sigh of relief.
But I'm happy that we're back because it's fun to have an excuse to chat about music stuff.
Sure. So the topic today is, what have we been listening to lately? I've been listening to a lot of stuff, actually. Although I got to say, in the spirit of true transparency, this list was created in January. And so, but in talking about what have you been listening to lately, it dawned on me that it might be useful to describe a little bit about our own personal listening habits in general. Mm-hmm. I know for myself, if I'm really, really, really honest, I don't listen to a lot of different types of music on my own. I have to go out and search for it. I sort of have to go out of my way to go search stuff out because my attention is divided between listening to music and listening to a book on tape or a podcast or some YouTube show that I subscribe to. So having said that, the way I've been approaching it lately, my listening habits have kind of revolved around, if I'm not just naturally gravitating towards the 50 albums that I have just been listening to for the last 30 years, then I'm referring to a list that I've created of albums that just pop into my head. Oh, I've never listened to that John Abercrombie record from 1985 or something like that. I'll write it down and I put it in a list.
Oh, interesting.
With a little it's like a table so that I have notes that I can take about that particular release. And it could be literally anything. It could be someone asking me, "Hey, have you heard this band? Have you heard the new?" I mean, I'll listen to almost anything, at least for a minute. My listening habits have of late revolved around this big listening list. And if I'm not focused on that, then I will literally listen to but the only thing I listen to are mixes of music that I'm recording for myself or with other people. So you could say that I listen to the sound of my own voice a whole lot. What about you? What are your listening habits look like?
I don't have a paper list or any list except for in my head, but I gravitate towards happily listening to the same 20 albums over and over and over and over and over. For this, I typically use YouTube Music, and I tend to, I don't really like trusting the algorithm to play DJ for me. That annoys me. So I tend to just, when I turn it on, search for an album. Typically a record I already know, something I probably own on CD or vinyl, and I'm too lazy to, dig out the physical media. And so we're talking about all the types of bands that we've spoken about previously on this podcast. I won't even name them because if you've made it this far, you've got an idea.
Right.
But what I try to do also is to check out either stuff that's new to me or new in general. And I'm guilty of not listening to a lot of brand new music. I will admit that right away, but I do sometimes. And typically that is going to be, again, through YouTube or through Bandcamp, which is a pretty useful interface, right? So having been in lots of bands that mostly use Bandcamp in lieu of physical media, I find Bandcamp is a good way to find new or current stuff I've missed, stuff that's been recommended to me. And then also, I tend to read about music more than I listen to music. And that sounds crazy, but so I'll be reading on a forum or in a book or something, and I'll think, I've never really gotten into that band, right? Or never heard that soundtrack or whatever it is. And then I'll seek it out. And again, I'll usually use YouTube for it. I don't listen to as much in the way of podcasts and stuff or audiobooks as I used to, even last year. So, and without going political in our podcast, my consumption of news and opinion I went cold turkey on November 6th, 2024. I was just like, I'm out.
The day after,
I'm done. I'm out. So I don't listen to news or news talk or political stuff or whatever. I just don't. Right. I'm out, at least for now. So I don't have the same competition for headspace that you've got, I guess. I tend to listen when I'm driving. By myself, I always have music playing. When I'm home and can get away with it, I'll often have headphones on listening to what I want. But very little of my listening is in an open room with speakers. And that's due to, having pets and family members in and out. And it's not as enjoyable for them and it's distracting for me. So I don't do a whole lot of that.
There is a lot of competition in my world where it's music is fighting for primacy with these other things to get my attention. So,
and I think that's a good metaphor for the music industry, the ecosystem as a whole. It's so different than when you and I were first playing music together 100 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. But to get to my list of things that I've been listening to lately, or since January. So I should mention ahead of time that these aren't all necessarily prog rock related. Some of them are certainly within the blast radius of prog rock.
The blast radius. I like that.
So, some of them, I think the algorithm fed to me. Some of them were referred to me by my 21-year-old son, who is a huge prog head. And so, and I should mention that he does let the algorithm feed him the next new thing. And I got to say, well, if this is what the algorithm is feeding you, then it's doing a pretty good job, because I think they're pretty interesting selections. So the first item on my list is a band called The Band Feel. The selection that I heard is a self-titled EP from 2024. According to their website, they are a rock band from St. Louis, known for their dynamic sound that pays homage to the classic rock era while adding a modern twist. Without just reading a bunch of stuff off of my screen, they are just a good old-fashioned rock and roll band. They got the long hair and the bell bottoms, and they just play kind of a Led Zeppelin style rock and roll. I mean, you can hear like James Gang and Allman Brothers. You can hear just that classic rock sound in this band. It's a very stripped down format. I think it's like a guitar, bass, drums, vocalist. A couple of the guys probably do BGVs. I would not classify them prog by any stretched definition that, other guys like us might be discussing. But I really dig them. I really like that kind of classic rock sound.
Yeah. Never heard them.
Yeah, I think I discovered them on Instagram, of all things. I got to say, I've been sort of returning to this sort of good old classic rock sound in recent years. I have a couple other selections that are sort of in that vein. That's not so much prog. It's just good old rock and roll, which is the bedrock of prog rock. So my next pick is a band. I really, really love this next band. They're called the Once and Future Band. And the two selections that I heard were a self-titled album from 2017 and another one called Deleted Scenes from 2020. These guys blew me away. They really did. They're a very accessible prog fusion that sounds like a cross between Weather Report, Steely Dan, and bands like Hatfield in the North. They've got a pop rock XTC Beatles vibe going on. They're a little artsy like Bowie, but they've definitely got an accessibility. Like, imagine a well-crafted pop song that had like a Steely Dan interlude with maybe something in 5/4 and a Mini Moog solo. And I don't mean like I mean like they're ripping and but it's tasteful. So, I mean, even in parts, it reminded me of like George Benson or something like that. So there was even a bit of a soul vibe. It's almost like they picked all of my favorite genres and they
You're their
stuck them
target
together.
audience.
I was their target audience. It just had the perfect balance of complexity and sophistication without being too demanding on my ears. They have this tune called How Does It Make You Feel, which combines all of these features that I was talking about. And I think I even heard like an occasional mellotron flute, thrown in there just to little prog.
Just to make you happy.
Just to make me happy. So they even emulated there was some song I heard where they emulated a Dave Stewart buzzy fuzz organ sound here and there. So highly recommend the Once and Future Band.
Have to check them out. That sounds good.
My next selection is a band called Black Midi. And
I've heard release. Yeah.
This again was another one that my son sat me down. He had the vinyl. He dropped $40 or $50 on the vinyl for this. It's called Hellfire from 2022. It's a very experimental sounding album. There's a lot of like first person narratives and there's a lot to like in this album. When my son sat me down, we had to sit down and like pay attention.
There's a lot going on, if I remember correctly.
There's a lot going on. Yeah. So have you heard this album?
I heard something around that time period, but I don't know the name of it. And I was impressed by the band for sure.
It was a very challenging listen for me. It was on my list to give it a second hearing, and I'm still preparing myself for it. So I don't go into listening to some new music with a lot of enthusiasm. Like I have some reluctance. Like I said, I'd heard of these guys before a few years ago, and my son finally introduced them to me. I'll just go out and say he's my primary new music provider. He's my pusher. He is the algorithm, and he has the stamina and open-mindedness for discovering new, interesting, provocative, and innovative music. Whereas I don't. I just don't.
I think I'm the same way. I need a gatekeeper, somebody to say, hey, listen to this, try this out.
Right.
There's so much information out there. It would be a full-time job just to scan Bandcamp and YouTube or stand in line at the record store every day and wait for them to open so you could listen to new releases. And that used to excite me a long time ago, and it does not anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I am giving everything as fair a shake as possible. And which is why I kind of mentioned my listening list. I'm like, well, I'm going to approach this. I did like a lot of it at first listen, and I liked the pretty parts. Like, oh, there's a major 7 in there. I like that. Overall though, I didn't like it because I don't really like music that challenging. So that's why I put it on my list of something to return to. I'm just a very close-minded prog rock listener, I think. So my next selection is a band called Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, and their album Night Gnomes from the same year, 2022. They're an Australian psychedelic rock band formed in 2014, frequently compared to other psych rock bands like Tame Impala and King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard.
And this one you did share a link with me some time ago, and I checked it out, and it's good. It's not really, I didn't get too far into it, but I heard it enough to think, oh, that's pretty neat.
Yeah, I think there are some things to like. I see the similarity to King Gizzard, which is another, like, we could probably create a podcast just on that band. I don't want to, but I think my son could probably do it. He's a huge King Gizzard fan. The comparisons to them make sense to me. There's very much a psych rock vibe with this band. Track 2, the tune Lava Lamp Pisco, starts out with a guitar through a Leslie, I think. It's this real solid, heavy Zeppelin type of sound, which I dig. Overall, it was a pretty decent sounding record. I'm trying to decide if I'll listen to it again, but it was good. It was good. Another one that I was kind of surprised that I liked, that was John Anderson and the Band Geeks.
Oh, yeah.
Had an album called True that came out in 2024.
I heard good things about that one, but I never got around to hearing it.
Yeah, man, I got to say that John Anderson's output from the last several years has been more impressive than anything I've heard come out of Yes. Personally, I have sort of put my love affair with Yes quietly to bed. I like what I like. I have not followed anything that they've done in 20 or 30 years. Like every now and then I'll hear something like, oh, that's pretty good. But I haven't been, I'm not waiting in line at Sam Goody to get the next release, on Tuesday or whatever, whatever.
I don't think I've bought a Yes new release since Talk. And Talk was what, 1994?
1995. Yeah. Yeah, same here. That was the last one that I was like, that I owned and listened to all the way through more than once. So I know they've done some good stuff, but having said all that, I've just lost interest in the band. They're doing what they're doing. A lot of bands do it, and good for them. But this record was just such a pleasant surprise. I was blown away. It delivered all the things I would hope to hear from the band Yes. It may be unfair to think that this group is just being a type of Yes surrogate, but, just something to fill in the gap where the actual Yes has left me wanting.
Right.
This release has everything that a classic Yes fan should like, like the virtuosic playing and the solid and engaging writing and arrangements and his spacey lyrics and his vocals. Like, his vocals are as strong as they've ever been. To me, it even has this sort of fist pumping energy that you'd expect from Big Generator or something like that. It might be a little cheesy, but I like that stuff. I genuinely like that. Or, Order of the Universe kind of,
Right.
We don't need anybody. All that kind of.
I did see some live stuff on YouTube of the Band Geeks with John doing Yes material, and it was super good. I mean, some of the best Yes song interpretations I've heard in decades.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, I very recently saw a friend of mine posted this, all of the various Yes keyboard players performing the Close to the Edge solo. So they had Rick Wakeman and Pat Moraz and Tom Brislin and Igor Korachev and Adam Wakeman, I think. Like, all of these guys playing the solo. And one of the better ones was, of course, I think his name is Clark something, the guy from the Band Geeks. And he did a very impressive solo And and I don't know how you feel about it. To me, that solo is sort of like it's a part. You learn it note for note.
Yeah, we talked about that solo in our favorite prog solos episode, and I take your point that that's not one you want to screw around with. You want to replicate it if possible.
So there were a couple of guys that just went a little too off. Like the Patrick Moraz version was like, all right, he was like, I'm doing my own thing, which has its place. But the Band Geeks guy did a version where he had like about maybe 2 bars of riffing completely off the cuff that was super cool and very tasteful. These guys can clearly play. I thought this was just a really great album. It's one I'll listen to again. I don't know how you are, but I'm not real crazy about any music that has the prog moniker attached to it. In some ways, because of how formulaic it becomes, it's a little bit like, here's the 7/8 section. Here's the section about dragons or the end of the world or some, it's the thing that brought us all into it, but it's also the thing that's like, okay, well, this is just some tired old, it's a template. And so I liked how this didn't feel, it had those features, but to me, it didn't feel like a cookie cutter release. So
cool.
So I stumbled across this other, it wasn't really a record. It was a Steve Tibbetts video, live video. Are you familiar much with Steve Tibbetts?
Yeah, he's impressive. I remember our friend Mark Kazmarek was into him back in the day.
Yeah. I would say that he kind of introduced me full force to the ECM milieu, that overall sound and vibe and catalog of material, which for many years I absolutely loved, and I would say I still love it. I just don't listen to it quite as much as I used to. I think the name of the YouTube link, I think it was just called Test, and it was a jam. But for anyone that doesn't know Steve Tibbetts, he was an American guitarist and composer. The Wikipedia entry on him says that he views the recording studio as a tool for creating sounds. He plays acoustic and electric guitar and exotic percussive instruments.
I do remember a lot of hand percussion in the Steve Tibbetts that I heard, like drum circle sounding kind of stuff.
Yeah, almost like a very, they used to call it world music in the
world
80s.
Music. There you go.
Yeah.
That's a term I haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah. I always thought of guys like Peter Gabriel as being sort of towards the top of that pile of, stuff in that category. Although I don't think he was ever in the world music section of Sam Goody. Maybe he was.
I think he just had enough money to pay all those world music musicians to steal their bits and incorporate it into his own music.
It was between him and Paul Simon who had the most money to throw around. So his music has been described as rock, jazz, ambient, experimental, and world music. He refers to it as, I like this one, postmodern neo-primitivism. You stick that in your pipe and smoke it. It was a really cool live video. I'm unsure of the year it was made. It looked like the early 80s. It was a trio. It was some other ECM guys, Bob Hughes playing bass and Mark Anderson playing percussion. The album that I had back in the day was called Exploded View. It was during my ECM obsession. And I didn't venture into his material too often, even then, or even now, but it was just a pleasure to run across that again and sort of reintroduce myself to that, improv soundscapey type of, it's like noise, but more soundscapey kind of stuff. Were you familiar with much of his, did you have any of his records or?
I want to say I had a compilation, but I don't know if that's right. I don't know if he had his own compilation, but I had some kind of various artist thing, I think, with some Steve Tibbetts stuff, or maybe somebody made me a mixtape or something. Maybe that's what it was. He might have performed at the University of Georgia a long time ago. Do you remember that?
Perhaps he did. It wouldn't have surprised me to find out that he had done so. I will say, tangentially, that in the mid 90s, I saw, he wasn't an ECM artist. I think he was a Windham Hill guy, but I saw Michael Hedges.
Oh, maybe that's who I'm thinking of.
At it was Georgia Hall, I think was the name of the. No longer there, but they're at the Tate Center at the University of Georgia. They have this.
Is the Tate Center gone?
Tate Center is still there.
Oh,
it's been added on to and changed and renovated. It's not recognizable to a guy like you and me, except for in a few small places. I think the movie theater is still there, but yeah, I saw Michael Hedges there many years ago. It was amazing.
Cool. Yeah, maybe I'm conflating Michael Hedges and Steve Tippett, but I like them both.
Yeah, as do I. Another one that I heard very recently was a band called Yang. They have several albums to their name. The one that I listened to was called The Failure of Words from 2017. And I became hip to them because they played at Prog Day in Chapel Hill last year. And so I thought, well, I'll check them out. And they're like a guitar-driven French four-piece. Has this very angular, mathy, King Crimson-ish type of sound. It's like not too sterile. Because, you know, a lot of that type of music has this sort of angularity and almost too precise type of sound where it sounds just a little too, this didn't sound too perfect. You know, for some reason, bands like Animals for Leaders kind of fits in that category, which I like those guys. Not really my thing, but very precise. On the nose.
I fatigue easily with that.
Yeah. There was a certain rawness to these guys that I really like. A lot of the cuts off of Starless and Bible Black have a similar sort of, this band doesn't sound like that necessarily, but there's with tunes like Fracture and stuff that are highly organized, highly arranged, and highly technical, but there's still like a grit to the sound where it doesn't sound perfect. And so I like that because that rawness made it sound very human and approachable. They are a band that I would like to return to. They are also on Cuneiform Records. Label mates of Mike Seri and French TV. So one other thing that I've been listening, and this is very recent, like a friend of mine posted something, a guy I play with posted a link to, you're going to think it's hilarious that I'm invoking the name of this band, I think. But so he posted footage of Triumph live at the US Festival 1983.
I've seen part of that video.
To kind of refer back to my earlier mentioning of a return to classic rock, when I saw it, I was like, oh yeah, I know virtually nothing about this band other than that they were a power trio from Canada. They were like the non-prog version of Rush or something like that. So I'd always heard about them. My ex-wife had a stack of Triumph records in her collection. And I was like, why have I not ever listened to this band? And I think it's because they were like not proggy enough, you know? And so I decided to give it a listen. And man, I loved it. It was just very, just raw rock and roll, a little melodramatic like bands from that period can be. But dude, Rick Emmett can play the hell out of the guitar, dude.
Yeah.
And he had the double neck and he was singing. And on this side of my own personal history in life, I'm a lot more impressed with how much sound you can get out of three dudes on stage doing anything. It doesn't matter how complicated it is. You know, I've played enough gigs with enough bands where it's like, all right, who's covering the chords? Who's covering the melody? Who's covering this? Who's covering that? And to see three dudes, you know, like Rush, the thing about Rush is that those guys had stacks of keyboards and foot pedals and all the rest of it. And these guys didn't really have, that wasn't their thing. I didn't take the dive into, you know, YouTube synth fraternity land to see a debrief on what his keyboard rig stack was over off onto the side stage for this 1983 concert. And I did notice that there were some like Taurus foot pedals. So there was some of that, but like, dude, it was guitar, bass, drums, vocals, and they were freaking rocking it. And I just really liked it. I'd never heard that concert. I hadn't heard those tunes, so I'm now delving into the band Triumph.
Nice. That's unexpected. I like that.
Anyway, so those are that's the top of my heap of selections for what I've been listening to lately. So
nice.
I'm curious what you've been listening to.
Yeah, so besides the usual suspects, well, actually, let me start off with briefly two of the usual suspects, because two records we've spoken about on previous episodes have just been re-released. And one is Gentle Giant Playing the Fool, the live album from 76 or 77. And I haven't gotten my physical copy yet, but I've listened to it streaming, and it sounds cool that it's remixed. I'm all about the remix. That's great. The puzzling thing is, because they wanted to remix the tracks, it's actually not all the same performances that were on the original record.
Oh.
So so when you listen to it, it's like, wait, that's a different keyboard solo than the one I've been listening to for the last 30 years. So that's a little odd. I'm going to wait. I'm going to reserve judgment till I get the physical copy, which should be in my mailbox pretty soon, as to how I feel about that.
Okay.
And then the other one is Pink Floyd finally released Live at Pompeii as a standalone live album. And I just saw the IMAX movie recently, which was great to see that remastered and on the big screen. And the remixes sound really cool. And I sprang for the Japanese pressing of it, where it's like the movie Blu-ray disc and the audio album together in one package, because I didn't want to have to buy it twice. And it's great. It's a great package, except the thing I didn't think about is I don't speak or read Japanese. So whatever's in the booklet, I don't know what's in there. But so anyway, not to go into those two, because we've discussed those in detail in the past, but talking about things that we have not talked about in the past on this podcast. One recent discovery in my recent listenings is not really a recent discovery, but just a recent reappraisal.
Okay.
And that is Greenslade, the band.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I think you and I, if I go back in the time machine, I think you and I tried some Greenslade on vinyl about, I don't know, 30 years ago. And I distinctly remember, I think it was you and I spinning the vinyl. And I distinctly remember putting it on, seeing the cover, knowing that it was like proggy. It's so obvious what you're getting, what you're going to expect, and then hearing it and being like, oh, no, not for me, not my thing. And being instantly like swatting the needle off the record and not being into it. And so I finally gave him another chance. And I have to say, something about it clicked with me this time. And so the record is Bedside Manners Are Extra, which I believe is their second album from 1973. Okay. Playing on it is great. The thing about it is it's got a kind of, I think the word you used to describe, maybe we were talking about Queen in the past, and you used the word campy to describe some of this songwriting type material. And I think that works well to describe Greenslade. It's a little, it's not quite as like serious as the capital P prog bands that we would normally have been listening to 30 years ago. And that's probably what turned me off. But the songs are great, and the presentation is really fun and great, and I highly recommend it.
Cool.
I don't know what about it resonated with me all this time later, but once I got it, I thought, oh man, that's cool. So I'm looking forward to listening to the rest of their stuff. I think they only have like 4 records from the 70s, so it's not that hard to get into them. Another one, another one that I got into recently accidentally, and I don't own this, and I have not downloaded this. I have to say that.
Okay.
But another thing that I've gotten into recently is the Jimmy Page soundtrack for the major motion picture Death Wish 2. And this happened because I accidentally saw about half of the movie Death Wish 2, which is a Charles Bronson movie from the early 80s.
Yeah.
And as I was watching it, I thought, man, the music is kind of cool. I did a Google, and then I recalled, wait a minute, I knew that Jimmy Page did this soundtrack. I just never had heard it before, and I liked it. It's
nice.
Parts of it are really cheesy. Parts of it are really cool, but it does answer the question of how bad would Led Zeppelin have been had they continued into the 80s? And I think the answer to that is they wouldn't have been bad exactly, but it's just glossy enough that I don't think had they continued in the 80s, those records would definitely be viewed as several steps down from 70s material. It's approaching like Def Leppard territory.
It's interesting you mentioned Zeppelin of the 80s. I firmly believe that Billy Squier is the 80s version of, like, that's what Led Zeppelin would have sounded like in the 80s.
Yeah.
Really like, you know, I can hear it now, the 80s Jimmy Page stuff.
There's like a string quartet that cuts in from time to time, and it's used effectively. It's neat. I like it. I recommend it. Cool. I would like to own it. I've heard that the vinyl goes for high prices.
Really? For the Death Wish?
Death Wish 2.
Death Wish. Oh, sorry.
Another thing, another oldie that I was aware of for years, but I don't know about you, but I'd never investigated, but recently I have, is Brian Auger's Oblivion Express. The organ player, Brian Auger. There's a compilation on Bandcamp now, and maybe it's on CD as well, but it's called The Complete Oblivion, which is all 6 of his Oblivion Express studio albums together in one giant package. So that's what I was listening to. The early stuff is great. Really cool. Really driving prog with Hammond and piano.
What year did that start? Is that like early 70s?
Early to mid 70s. Yeah.
Okay.
Definitely worth checking out.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
You know, we're talking about Bandcamp as a source of discovery. So I've got a few that I've been listening to exclusively on Bandcamp, maybe because they're not on any other streaming platform. Mm-hmm. And one I know you and I have compared notes about before. This came out in 2024. There's a French dude named, I'm probably going to massacre his last name, but in English, it appears his last name is Penguin. Do you remember this guy?
I do, yes.
It's like a Canterbury second coming, and it's really, really good. And it's on Bandcamp.
Yes.
And I'm really pretty taken with that. I haven't listened to it. I haven't spun it as much recently, but doing this episode with you makes me want to pull it out because it really has got enough vintage sounds going on that it really evokes the heyday of the Canterbury scene. It's really good stuff. Do you remember it?
Oh yeah, I very well. I was blown away. That's one I've spun a couple of times. I need to listen to it again. I couldn't believe it actually when I first. I was like, this is like a Lost Egg album.
Yeah.
The guy, and he plays all of the instruments and he plays them very well. And if I may toot my own horn, a writer for Expose, Peter Thalen, in writing a review of Penguin's release, he compared him to me in Valari.
Aw, that's sweet.
Which was pretty. Sounds that might be evocative of the band Valari from the 90s. But no, in all seriousness, that release, I can't wait to see what else he does because it's so good. It's so It's so good. They're good songs. It's good playing. I mean, it is. If I have any complaint about it, it's a little too good. It's a little too like, okay, this is. It's almost like you reincarnated Dave Stewart at the age of 23 or something. If that's a criticism, then it's a welcome one. I would think so.
Another Bandcamp discovery is a chap named Dominic Sanderson. Have you heard of this guy?
No.
He's got a release, I think it's from this year, called Blazing Revelations. It's very much in the prog vein with keyboards, and I thought it was just fun enough to keep my interest, so I was digging it.
Cool. Okay.
And a third Bandcamp discovery for me is another 2025 release, this one from Brazil. Again, I'll massacre the name of the band, Tubo de Ensuau, which I believe is Portuguese for test tube. And the name of the album is Endoflorema. Again, I'm probably getting that wrong. But it was definitely prog informed, but not cookie cutter prog music. So it's very mellow, like maybe you'd imagine a stereotypical Brazilian kind of exotic tropical sounding thing might be. So it's pretty mellow, female vocals and great playing, and then occasionally they'll cut away to like a little odd time signature and a keyboard solo, and it's very much, you could tell these, or a fuzz bass, you could tell these guys have their ears and lots of different record collections, which I enjoy. And so that's one that I just came across the other day, and I need to give it some more time. Hopefully we can post some kind of link.
Yeah. I think
playlists or Bandcamp or whatever.
Yeah, I think it would be pretty cool to do we might even do an episode solely on Bandcamp releases. Maybe. Because most of those guys are just independent artists slumming it out in the trenches, you know. They don't have the big budgets of bands like Triumph and Green Slade. Those guys get plenty of notoriety. So
well, I've got another Bandcamp thing to mention, and this was, have you ever heard of Neil Ardley? Ardley, Ardley?
No.
He's a British dude. I think I'd seen his name around, but I'd never heard him.
Okay.
There's a release on Bandcamp now called Kaleidoscope of Rainbows Live 75. And I think there's a studio record from that same era called Kaleidoscope of Rainbows, which I listened to and did not enjoy as much as this live release. And this live release, it sounds to me a lot like the Robert Wyatt live album from 74 without vocals.
Okay.
That was my initial take on it. Anyway, definitely a Brit jazz Canterbury vibe. And in fact, it includes Trevor Tompkins on drums and Dave McRae on keyboards.
Okay.
Yeah. And Ian Carr on trumpet. So there's definitely some connections. And I thought it was really cool sounding live release. And I was happy to have discovered it. And this guy, Neil Ardley, I think there's a book about him. I'd like to read more about him. He was like a well-known author and composer and musician, and just an all-around interesting dude that I would like to learn more about. So I think this is my jumping off point for getting into his stuff. Hopefully we'll see how that pans out.
Right.
And another thing I wanted to mention, this is definitely sparked by YouTube. You know, you and I, as lovers of the Canterbury sound, we have discussed how there's a certain cheesiness, certain like 1970s game show theme music vibe that goes along with that, of like cocktail jazz chords and a flute and a xylophone and a mini moog all tripling the same melody at the same time.
Right.
And I love that. So, I mean, growing up, my favorite music was the Price is Right game show TV theme music, which I still love that era. And I was listening on YouTube, somebody put, you know, probably a bootleg compilation of department store music from the 1970s.
Oh, yes.
So you can find different compilations of like elevator music from the 60s or the 70s or the early 80s. And it all has this kind of like On hold music is another thing that I like.
Right.
It's very calming, very peaceful.
See, smooth jazz. It's smooth jazz adjacent.
Yeah. It's smooth, goofy jazz. So I was listening to department store music from the 70s, and I heard one that sounded familiar, and I really, really thought it was great. And I looked it up. I did some research, and it turns out it was by Carl Jenkins of Soft Machine fame.
Oh, okay.
Not just Soft Machine fame, though. Carl Jenkins is another guy it would be nice to talk about in depth, like his career, because he's gone on to be an award-winning, world-famous composer and conductor of orchestral music. But this song was called, among other songs, was called Mr. Lucky. It's pretty easy to find. I think it's been used all over the place. You'll probably recognize it if you hear it. It was recently, I was watching TV, which I don't do a whole lot of, and I heard it in a Coffee Mate creamer TV ad.
Wow.
Recently. Yeah, this year, 2020.
Oh, cool.
So it's still out there. That guy must have made some serious coin off of the song. But department store music, elevator music from the 70s is definitely one of my favorite things to put on if I'm like, I've got a long drive ahead of me and I just want to chill. Out. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you sent me a link where it might be in one of our other playlists somewhere where it was sounds for supermarket.
Yes, yeah, grocery store music. Yeah, that's another term.
It's funny we're talking about this. So I two things. One is must have been a Facebook social media post somewhere that someone had uploaded a mixtape of all of the music that used to play at Kmart.
Yes, I love that stuff.
And so it's probably very similar. I'll be curious to know, like, is this like 70s smooth stuff, or is this more 80s or 90s? I'd be curious to see what it sounds like.
So smooth, it's tepid. That's how I describe it.
That's right. A solid 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. When I worked at a conference center in the late 90s, they had music playing through the distributive sound system throughout the building. And we had this some kind of AV setup where I guess we had some kind of technology that allowed us to record the feed. And we a couple of times I actually made like compilation tapes of the music that was playing through the building. I wish I still had those. But it also made me think of, and I don't think this is an original moniker, but if it isn't, then I want to lay claim to the term Fusac. One part fusion, one part music.
I don't know if I've heard that, but I'm comfortable giving you the credit for that.
Because I would actually like to give my friend Brandon Hicks, who in some universe, I would like to start a band where we are playing. It's kind of fusion-y, but it's kind of smooth. It's like if Jeff Beck's band were playing at a wedding.
Right. There you go.
So they got to bring it down, bring it down to about a 6.
Bring it down and keep it friendly.
Keep it friendly. Right. Nothing in 7/8, fellas. Anyway, continue with your list.
How about the Italian band Area? They had a live album.
Oh, yeah.
From the mid to late 70s, and I don't even have the title in front of me, but that was really cool. Avant-garde, prog, great musicians, cool band. And another one, how about the Texas band Kruangbin? I think I'm probably mispronouncing that too.
Oh.
Kruangbin, Kruangbin. It's the trio. I thought I shared some of this with you. The trio, they play mostly instrumental, laid back, kind of funky jams, songs with melody, guitar melody. Very kind of exotic sounding, but also like simplified. Okay. So it's sometimes they might sound like the Meters for a minute, but not complex. Or a lot of that, like, I don't know if you remember years ago when exotic psychedelic pop music from the 60s from Thailand or Malaysia or whatever came I had a resurgence. They kind of sound like that. It's kind of exotic sounding, simplified, mostly instrumental groove music, and it's really good. I'd like to see them live. I think they've gotten pretty popular.
Okay.
So pretty big concerts, festivals, perhaps. But that's one band that I would like to see on stage that I've never seen.
Cool. I have to look them up.
And that's all I've really got on my list.
It's a pretty good list. So I don't know if we want to cut this back into your earlier conversation about Greenslade, but it did make me think of a Greenslade release that I ran across very much by accident, probably about a year ago. I think I told you about it. David Greenslade and Patrick Woodruff. The title, The Cosmogony of the Pentateuch from 1979. Got a bit of a Mike Oldfield, Tangerine Dream, Vangelis kind of vibe. Phil Collins plays.
That's right. Yeah. I heard some of that, and it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was interesting at moments. It was a bit long, but but when you brought that up, I thought, oh wait, yeah, I dug into the Greenslade thing briefly. So I'd be curious how similar this is to.
I don't know. I think the Greenslade record, the stuff that really grabbed me, it had kind of a Supertramp meets Queen kind of vibe.
Oh, that sounds
like
cool.
Concise, smart and concise and fun and not too serious. And it was cool. I think you might dig it.
This release is none of those things.
Yeah.
It is not concise. I wouldn't call it fun, and it's very serious. I mean, a title called The Cosmogony of the Pentateuch it's about everything.
And why not?
And like the most prog thing. We'll put the Bible to music. You know?
Yeah.
It's like. Thanks for joining us again on this episode of Underdubs. Be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. See you next time.